Okay, good day. Let us now start with our new topic, all about analytic geometry. Okay, so I think you're already familiar with the Cartesian coordinate plane or the coordinate axis. Okay, so our bridging course started with our discussion about real numbers. So basically, real numbers are plotted in a horizontal line. Okay, now we'll make this two-dimensional by introducing another axis, which is a vertical axis. Okay, so Rene Descartes introduced this as the x and y axis that comprises this whole plane. Okay, so we started with just one dimension, itong horizontal line, which is the which represents all real numbers. Now we'll be introducing another axis which also represents a set of real numbers. So ito siya, the vertical axis. The horizontal axis is called the x-axis, while the vertical axis is called the y-axis. Now, the intersection between these two axes is called the origin, or this is usually denoted as point O. That is the origin. Now, a point within this plane is described as this ordered pair AB. So collectively, this is called the coordinate of a point. Coordinate of a point. Now, the first element in this ordered pair is the abscissa or the x coordinate. Okay, and the second element in this ordered pair is called the ordinate or y coordinate. Okay, ayun. Now, numbers to the right are positive numbers, to the left negative numbers, so similar to the real number line, and numbers above are positive and numbers below are negative. Okay, then this whole Cartesian plane is divided into quadrants or into four parts. So we label this in a counterclockwise manner. So the first quadrant is this plane, all positive. So positive na x, positive na y. So this is the first quadrant. Then the second quadrant is this plane that comprises of negative abscissa and positive ordinates. Then this is the third quadrant. Both are negative. And this is the fourth quadrant wherein the abscissa are positive and the ordinates are negative. Okay. So basically, yun lang siya. So now let's talk about increments and distances. Okay. In a Cartesian coordinate, if we have 2 points, let's say this is point P and this is point Q. If the point is moving from point P to point Q, then we could say that there is a change or an increment in its position from P to Q. Okay? Okay, we'll describe this by first describing all the points or these 2 points. So point P, let's call this x1, y1. So yan yung i-denote natin. And for point Q, let's call this x2, y2. Okay, that means we moved from x1 position to x2 position. So, syempre, if we describe this now sa Cartesian, this distance is x2. And this distance here is x1. Change in the distance, or this distance, is x2 minus x1. So x2 minus x1 is the increment of x. So that's delta x equal to the change in x, or the change in x is delta x. So that's x2 minus x1. So this is also read as change in x. Likewise, there's also a change in y because we have for the first point, this is its vertical distance from the y-axis, from the x-axis. So we call this y1, of course. So this distance is y1, and for our second point, point Q, this distance is y2. So the change in the distance vertically is y2 minus y1. So the change in y, or delta y, is y2 minus y1. Now, if we try to connect the 2 points, okay, let's try to connect P and Q, okay, and let's just highlight this side and this side. We have actually formed a right triangle, wherein this side is the change in x, and this side is the change in y. Now, the hypotenuse in this right triangle is the distance between P and Q. So let's call that D. So therefore, from this illustration, we could say that the distance, using the Pythagorean relation or Pythagorean theorem, the distance squared or hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the square of the bases, meaning that's the change in x squared plus the change in y squared. Hence, we have the distance formula, which is equal to the square root of delta x squared plus delta y squared. Now, since delta x is x1, x2 minus x1, then we'll denote this as x2 minus x1 squared plus delta y is y2 minus y1 squared. So this is now our distance, or the distance formula. Okay, let us now proceed to this example. Well, let's call this problem 15.1 or dash 1 because we are now in lesson 15. Okay, find the increments in the coordinates of a particle that moves from A, which has a coordinate of 3 and negative 3, to B with coordinates negative 1 and 2. Okay, for the sake of illustration, let's just plot the 2 points in the Cartesian coordinate plane. It's located at 3, negative 3. So that means that's the fourth quadrant. So that means the abscissa is located 3 units to the right, and the ordinate is located 3 units downward. So this is point 3, negative 3. So let's call this point A, which is 3, negative 3. Now point B is located at negative 1, 2, which is the second quadrant. So that's located right here. So B is at negative 1, 2. Of course, you know that that is 1 unit to the left and 2 units above or upward. Okay. So this is now the location of the second point, B. Now, it says that the particle moved from A to B, meaning the movement is from here to here. Okay? So, if you want to solve for the increment, so sobrang dali ng problem na to. So, the change in x, or the current increment in x, that is just equal to, diba, it's x2 minus x1. So, it is described or defined here as if x changes from x1 to x2. So, yung mauuna yung second point. So, that means our increment, or the change in x, is equal to x at the second point, which is point B, minus x at the first point, which is point A. Okay? So, the change in x is negative 1 minus 3, which is equal to negative 4. So the change in x is negative 4. So that implies that the change in x is 4 units to the left. So eto, from here, it moved 4 units to the left. Okay. Now, the increment in y, or the change in y, is just yb minus ya. So that would be equal to 2 minus negative 3. which is 5. So that means the point changed vertically by 5 units or 5 units upward. So from here, 5 units siya up to this point. Okay, so ganun lang siya kadali. Now, applying the distance formula. So let's call this problem 15-2. First, we solve for the increment. Now, let's solve for the distance. So let's find the distance of A, B, of AB. So we are using the same example. So A, that's 3, -3, and B, that's -1, 2. So finding the distance and distance formula, memorize na, napakadali. Paulit-ulit. So that's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Anyway, if we use the distance formula, you can interchange the location or the pag-denote kung asan yung second and first point kasi square naman siya, so you'll always get the positive or the absolute value. But ngunit, so balit datapwat, in this case, follow lang natin yung description sa original problem. So our second point is still B and the first point is still A. And anyway, na-solve naman natin yung distances na yan. That would be -4 and 5. So I will just substitute. So D is equal to the square root of -4 squared plus 5 squared. So D is equal to the square root of 16 plus 25. 16 plus 25, that would be 41, or square root of 41. So this is the distance, or that's approximately equal to, if we use a calculator, that's approximately equal to 6.403 units. So that's a distance. Napakadali. Super easy. Now, going back to our first illustration, ito, we would also notice, or if we notice the triangle, the right triangle, we could also relate this to our discussion on the ratios sa trigonometry. Okay, so let me just copy this. Okay, so let's introduce this angle, or let's name this angle as angle phi or phi. Okay, sorry, that's phi or phi. If it's in Greek, it's phi. If it's English pronunciation, it's phi. Now, the increment in y suggests the rising of the point. So the increment of y is the rise, and the increment in x, that's the running of the point, the horizontal movement of the point. So we call that the run. So the ratio delta y over delta x, that is rise over run, and we call that the slope m. Okay, m is the symbol for slope. Okay, but wait, there's more. If we relate that to this angle, if we relate the increment in y and the increment in x to this angle, we have another relationship. Because this is a right triangle, we have a relationship between the opposite and the adjacent side. And we know that the tangent of that angle is equal to the opposite side over the adjacent side, which is equal to m. So therefore, the slope is equal to the tangent. So therefore, the slope is equal to the tangent of the angle of inclination. So phi is the angle of inclination. Okay, phi is the angle of inclination. The way, if we are describing just a line, that means the slope is constant, diba? So any point within the straight line, the changes are are constant. So constant. Ang slope niya dito, rise over run, the same as here, the same as here. So all throughout this line, constant siya. Okay? So for a straight line, the angle of inclination is just tangent phi. Okay? Oh no, the slope is just equal to the tangent of the angle of inclination. Okay, so that's it. So we'll now proceed to the equations of a straight line. Equations of a line. Okay, a straight line or a line. Okay, let's start with this. With this slope kanina. We know that slope is the change in y over the change in x, or the increment in y over the increment in x, or rise over run. Now, if we change, or if we write delta y as y2 minus y1 and delta x as x2 minus x1, so therefore we could have this equation: y2 minus y1 is equal to the slope times x2 minus x1. So this is one equation of a straight line if m is constant. So if m is constant, again, if m is constant, we are describing a straight line. Okay, if m is not changing, we are describing a straight line. We'll call this the point slope form. The point slope form of a line. Very easy. So it just started with using the equation of a slope. Okay? What does it mean if the slope is positive and negative? So ako din yung sasagot. For positive slope, that means yung rise natin is positive, over run natin is also positive. Okay? So that means if we have this point and it changed vertically positive, so magmo-move siya upward, then it changed horizontally positive, so nag-move siya to the right. So meaning, if we connect those points, ito yung inclination natin. Okay? Okay? Now, a positive slope could also be yung rise natin is negative and yung run natin is negative. Because rise over run, or negative over negative, that's still positive. So, if we started from this point and yung rise natin negative, meaning nag-move siya downward. Then, yung run niya negative, that means nag-move siya to the left. So, if we connect the original point to the second point, eto pa rin yung inclination ng line natin. So, when the line is oriented like this, that's a positive slope. Of course, we could readily say that for negative slope, the orientation is like this. Okay? That's negative slope. Why? Ako din yung sasagot. Lagyan natin ng line dyan. So for negative slope, suppose we started from this point to this point. Sa negative slope kasi, that's negative rise and positive run. So ganun siya. Pababa over to the right. So negative rise over positive run, that's negative. Now, it could also be positive yung rise over negative yung run. That's still negative. So, let's say, it started from this point, then positive yung rise, pero yung run negative. So, ito na yung point natin. So, that's negative slope. Okay? Now, let's continue with this illustration. So, suppose we have this line, oriented siya that way. Then, we'll denote this intersection between the axes as coordinates na lang ilagay natin. So, suppose this distance is given by the value b, and this distance is given by the value a. Describing this point. Okay? So, how about this point? That would be 0 sa x, pero meron tayong b sa y. Okay? So, hindi siya nag-move sa x, pero nag-move siya above. Hindi siya nag-move sa y, pero nag-move siya with respect to x. So, we have this. Okay? Now, these points, A0 and B and 0B are called the intercepts. That's A0 and 0B. Okay, so A0, A now is the x intercept and B is the y intercept of this line that we are describing. Okay, now if we relate that to the slope m, m is equal to, if we are describing this line, what is m equal to? Okay, so that's delta y over delta x, or sige, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that would be equal to, let's say our y1 is this and y2 is this. Anyway, pwede din tayo mag-interchange. It doesn't matter. So, this is our point 1, this is our point 2. So, that would become 0 minus b over a minus 0. So, the slope is just negative b over a, which is, kung i-relate na lang natin sa diniscuss ko just a while ago, that would be from this point negative, ayan o, negative b over a. Negative b kasi nag-move siya downward, b units, then nag-move siya to the right, a units. So that's negative b downward over positive a to the right. Okay, so kaya siya naging negative b over a. Now, kung ibalik natin siya to this equation, at any point, let's say, let's introduce another point. Let's say this point here, let's denote this as xy. By the way, and tanan na points or lahat ng points within this line are xy. Okay, xy to sila lahat. Specify lang natin as x1, y1, or y2, x1, y1, x2, y2, when we're describing a particular point, specific point. But generally, all points are just xy. Okay? So, let's say xy is located here. It could be located anywhere, but dito na lang natin drawing for the sake of illustration. So, this is xy. So, if that is xy, let us now describe the slope. The slope to xy. Okay? Now, let us look at this point and xy this time. Okay? So, we started from this point, then we look at this point. So, the slope is equal to the change in y, so that would be y minus b, nakuha, y2 minus y1. So, y minus b over x2 minus x1. So, that's x minus 0. Now, simplifying, we'll have mx is equal to y minus b. So, therefore, y is equal to mx plus b. This is now our slope y-intercept form of a line. So, this is the most popular kasi pinakamadaling ma-memorize na equation of a line. Y is equal to mx plus b. Actually, when I was in high school and college, ito lang yung na-memorize ko. Y is equal to mx plus b. Okay? Because the form is already a function, y as a function of x, y is equal to a function of x, where m and b are constants. So, the variable is x. So, naka-form na siya as a function of x. Okay? So, that's why it's very convenient. But if you want to express this in terms of slope and x-intercept form, how do we do that? Ako na lang din sasagot. So, we know that m is equal to negative b over a. So, that means b is equal to negative am. Tama ba? I just, I just move this to the other side of the equation. So, substituting to this na lang, dito na tayo mag-substitute. That would be y is equal to mx minus b, which is am. Oh, sorry, negative am. Then factoring out m, that would become x minus a. So this is now the slope x-intercept form of the line. Y is equal to m times x minus a. You can also derive that using this equation of the slope. M is equal to, paano ba? Y minus 0 over x minus a. So if you notice, pareho pa rin. If you transpose that here, so that becomes y is equal to m times x minus a. Pareho pa rin siya dito. Okay? So that's a slope x-intercept form of a line. Okay, now let's answer this next problem. So let's call the next problem as problem 15-3. Let's use the same example. Now let us find the line joining A and B. So eto pa rin. Let's use this gihapon. So let me copy that. Paste it here. So let's try this one. Problem 15-3. Find the equation joining A and B. Okay. So we have different ways of solving this. So you could either use the slope point form, or you can use the slope intercept form, either x or y intercept. So kahit ano yung gamitin natin, okay lang. So first thing we'll do, kasi point naman yung given, how about kung mag point slope form na lang tayo? Okay, so we have m is equal to y1, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Sorry, that's x2 minus x1. So let's compute first the slope. That would be, that's 2 minus negative 3 over negative 1 minus 3. So we have 5 over 4. The slope, sorry, 5 over negative 4, or the slope is negative 5 over 4. Okay, we are using the point slope form. Ganito lang gagawin natin. Instead of using y2, you can just use y1. You can just change y2 to y. So y minus y1 equal to m times x minus x1. Pwede din kasi, pwede din naman na this is y2 and this is x2. That means we are describing, kung etong gagamitin natin, that means we are describing the first point and the general points xy. Okay? Pag y2 and x2 yung gamitin natin dito, that means we are just looking at the second point and the general point xy. At parang ganito ba? Ayan. So, the general point xy. Ganun pa rin yung lalabas na answer. Pwede, try natin. So, y now is equal, minus. So, if we are, if we are using a, or if we considering a, that would be y minus 3, y minus negative 3 equal to m, which is negative 5/4 times x minus 3. It would be y plus 3 equal to negative 5/4 times x minus 3. So, transposing this to the other side, that would become 4y. Wait, that would become 4y plus 12 equal to, let's distribute negative 5 here, so that would become negative 5x plus 15. So, eto, i-transpose ko na lang dito. I'll change this to standard form of a line. So, kung standard form yung gagamitin natin, that would be 5x plus 4y equal to 15 minus 12. So, that's 3. So, this is the standard form. So, kung general form, that would be 5x plus 4y minus 3 equal to 0. Anyway, so that's the equation of our line. Now, if we want to express this as a function, pwede din naman. Meaning if want to express this as function of x equal to y, so slope-intercept form yung gagamitin natin. Sige, let's try to solve the problem, the same problem using slope-intercept form. So, just allow me to copy this. Okay. But this time, we'll use the slope-intercept form. Y is equal to mx plus b. Mas convenient kasi ito for me. Now, we will be describing either A or B. Or meaning, what I mean is, we'll be considering either A and or B. That would be okay. So, from the previous example, previous solution, we already derived or we already solved the value for the slope, which is just negative 5/4. So we'll just substitute it here. Therefore, y is equal to negative 5 over 4 x plus b. Now, we could approach it this way. If we consider either of these points, let's say na lang, let's point B. At point B, the coordinate is negative 1 and 2. So that means the value of x is negative 1 and the value of y is positive 2. So you just substitute these values to x and y. Okay? So that would be 2 is equal to negative 5 over 4 times negative 1 plus b. So from here, pwede natin masolve si b. So we have 2 equal to 5/4 plus b. So b is equal to 2 minus 5 over 4. That would be 8 minus 5 over 4, which is 3/4. So b is 3/4. So going back to the equation mx plus b, y is equal to mx plus b, we have y is equal to negative 5/4 x plus b, which is 3/4. So we have this. This is now in the form f of x equal to y, or y is equal to f of x. Now, if we compare this to our previous answer, the LCD is, common yung denominator, so just copy the denominator 4, so that's negative 5x plus 3, so we have 4y equal to negative 5x plus 3, so basically you have the same answer, 5x plus 4y equals to 3. So, ganun pa rin. So, any convenient na equation for you, that's good. Pero kung ako yung tatanungin, pinaka-convenient for me is yung slope point form and your slope intercept form. Slope y-intercept form. Okay, now this time we'll tackle about the angle between two lines. We're done with inclination kanina. So, how about angle between two lines? Okay. So first, let's have this illustration. Let's draw a Cartesian plane in which meron tayong dalawang line. So let me introduce one line. Ito, I'll call this line A na lang. And this line, let's call this line B. Okay, ganon. Wait, how about kung, kasi parang perpendicular yung labas, no? Let's do it like this. Yan. Para klaro, hindi na siya perpendicular. Okay. Now, let's call this line B. So, in terms of inclination niya, we could say that the angle of inclination, let's use another color. So, if I draw a horizontal line at the point of intersection, so this is the angle of inclination of point B. I'll call that beta. And let's call this angle of inclination of line A as alpha. Okay? Okay. So, therefore, we know kanina that M is equal to tangent phi. that means the slope is equal to the tangent of the angle of inclination. So it follows, so that would be our reference, it follows that the slope of line A is equal to the tangent of its angle of inclination, which is alpha. Okay, and the slope of line B is equal to the tangent of its angle of inclination, which is beta. So m sub A is equal to tangent alpha, and m sub B is equal to tangent beta. Wait, sorry. Okay, now how about the angle of intersection between these two lines? So if we are looking at the angle of intersection between the two lines, so that would be this angle. If we are describing line 1, line A to line B, so that would be this angle. Let's call this na lang, ito na lang yung ano, let's call this phi. Phi na lang. I think phi natin. So, we could say from the illustration that phi is just equal to the difference of alpha and beta. That's the angle of inclination, the difference. Okay? Okay. Balik natin dito. So, from the figure, we have phi is equal to alpha minus beta. Now, what should we do with this? So, let us just apply tangent both sides. Okay? So, if I apply tangent both sides, that would be tangent phi is equal to tangent of alpha minus beta. And, of course, we know the identity for this. Tapos na tayo sa trigonometry. We know that the tangent of the difference between two angles is just equal to, that would be tangent alpha minus tangent beta all over 1 plus tangent alpha tangent beta. But where there's more, eto siya. We know that tangent alpha is m sub A, or the slope of line A, and tangent beta is the slope of line B. So therefore, the tangent of phi is equal to the slope of line A minus the slope of line B over 1 plus the slope of line A times the slope of line B. Okay, so if you want to solve now the angle of intersection between the two lines, you just need the slopes of the two lines, which is equal, or the angle of inclination now is equal to the arc tangent, ayusin natin, that's equal to the arc tangent of m sub A minus m sub B, ayusin natin, divided by 1 plus m sub A, m sub B. So that's the equation for the angle of inclination. So alpha is the angle, no, sorry, angle of intersection. Angle of intersection between line A and B. Lines A and B. So that's it. Now, let me consider this, or let me copy this equation again. Let us now investigate the angle, the relationship of parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's start with parallel lines. So suppose line A and line B are parallel. Suppose line A is parallel to line B. So what does that mean? Parallel lines. So let's say ito siya. Ayan. So line A, let's say ito yung line A. Tapos ito yung line B. So if they are parallel, that means if they intersect, they don't have an angle of intersection. Kasi pareho sila ng inclination. So that means if they are parallel, in other words, if they are parallel, the angle of intersection between them is 0. Okay? Now, since we have this formula, so let's just change this to 0. So therefore, MA minus MB over 1 plus MA MB is equal to 0. Hence, MA minus MB is equal to 0. So MA is equal to MB. So what does that mean? For parallel lines, their slope are just the same. Common sense. Kahit dito pa lang tingnan, they have the same slope. Okay, so that's it. Now, let's look at perpendicular lines. So when we say that two lines are perpendicular if they intersect at 90 degrees, or their intersection is 90 degrees. So let's draw that again. Suppose the two lines intersect at 90 degrees. So let's call this line B and let's call this line A. By the way, kung proper illustration yung pag-uusapan, yung line dapat may arrowhead both sides. Pero minamadali kasi, so ganyan na lang. Now, so they are perpendicular. So let's say that suppose line A is perpendicular with or to line B. So what does that mean? By the way, di ko nasabi kanina, no? If phi is 0, tangent 0 is 0, right? Tangent 0. That's why na 0 siya dito. Okay? But this time, if it's perpendicular, that means phi is 90 degrees. So tangent phi, that would be tangent 90 degrees, is equal to MA minus MB over 1 plus MA MB. So what is the value of tangent 90 degrees? It's undefined. Okay? So that is equal to undefined. And yung undefined, ano ibig sabihin pag undefined? Or infinity. That is the same as so dividing a number by 0, right? Kasi for 90 degrees na tangent, that would be opposite. Yung opposite niya may value, pero wala siyang value sa adjacent. So that's opposite over 0. So that means the denominator should be 0. So hence, 1 plus MA MB is equal to 0. Okay? And I think you are familiar with this nung nag-discuss ako about algebra. Diba? Na if we are equating that to infinity, you just get the denominator and equate it to 0. So that means MA MB is equal to negative 1. Hence, MA is equal to negative, this should be M. So MA is equal to negative 1 over MB. Or pwede din, MB is equal to negative 1 over MA. So what does that mean? Ako din sasagot. That means that for perpendicular lines, the slope are negative reciprocal of each other. Okay? Negative reciprocal. Okay? So for example, if you have a line na may slope siya na 2, then the slope of the line perpendicular to that line is negative 1/2. Now let's take this one example. This problem. So we have problem 15-4. Show that these points negative 2, 0, 1, negative 2, and 5, 4 are vertices of a right triangle. Of course, we know what a right triangle is. So a right triangle is a triangle with one angle equal to 90 degrees. Basic. Let's first plot these points. So let's draw Cartesian coordinate. Then let's plot these points. So we have first point is negative 2, 0. That would be this point. Let's say that would be this point, negative 2. So this point is negative 2, 0. The next point is 1, negative 2. So 1, negative 2. Let's say this point. And the other point is 5, 4. Okay. Now let's try to connect these points. So let us show that this is a right triangle. Okay, from the looks of it, it seems like ito yung 90 degrees dito. Okay? So how do we prove that this is a right triangle? Or what we have formed is a right triangle? We'll do that by looking at these three lines or line segments. Ito. If we could see that at least one of these lines are are negative reciprocal of each other, then those two lines intersect at 90 degrees. Hence, the triangle formed is a right triangle. So, yun lang. So, ang gagawin natin, let's compute the slopes. So, I'll name this line segment as line 1, this is line 2, and this is line 3. So, ganun na lang. So, I'll first compute the slope of line 1. So, computing the slope of line 1, so I'll just take a look at this. So, that would be 0 minus negative 2 over negative 2 minus 1. So, that's negative 2 over 3. Negative 2 thirds. Now, let us compute for the slope of line 2. So, that would be negative 2 minus 4 over 1. So, I'm referring itong dalawa. Anyway, we're looking for the slope. Okay lang sila magka-interchange. Pwede kayong mag-start dito to dito or dito to dito. So, ako, for convenience, ito na lang yung direction ko. Actually, pabaliktad kasi ito yung inuna ko. This minus this over this minus this. Okay, you can do that. So, that's 1 minus 5. So, that would be negative 6 over negative 4. Or the slope of line 2 is positive 3 halves. Now, pwede tayo mag-stop. Because we have shown that the slope of line 1 is negative reciprocal to the slope of line 2. Diba? Ayan. So, M1 is equal to negative 1 over M2. Let us check. So, that's negative 2 thirds equal to negative 1 over 3 halves. So, negative 2 thirds is negative 2 thirds. Okay. So, therefore, we could say that line 1 and line 2 are perpendicular. So if line 1 and line 2 are perpendicular and it forms a triangle with line 3, therefore the triangle the triangle is a right triangle. Ganun lang kadali. Okay, now let's take a look at this. Suppose you have this Cartesian line, a Cartesian plane, and let us describe 2 points. Again, point 1, which is x1, y1, and point 2, which is x2, that's point 2, x2, y2. Then, if we connect these 2 points, so it forms a line segment connecting point 1 and point 2. So, how about if we are interested at the midpoint between these two lines? So, let's call this point PM, or that's the middle point. So, that's XM and YM. The coordinates is XM and YM. Okay, so how do we get that? Okay, there are many ways to solve this. You can use ratio and proportion, pwede. So, if P sub M is a midpoint, that means it divides this segment into two equal parts. So, this is one part and this is still one part. Okay, it doesn't mean one unit yung length niya, but one part and one part. Okay, so let me extend this like this and like this. Now, this distance here is the increment of x, or the increment in x from P1 to PM. So that means this distance is xm minus x1. Okay, now this distance is the increment from P1 to P2. So that means this is x2 minus x1. Same as here. If I extend this, ganyan, okay, this distance is the change from x1 to pm. So this is ym minus y1. Now this distance is equal to y2 minus y1. Okay. Now, with this figure, we have two similar triangles. When we say similar figures, diba? Pag similar figures, they have different sizes but all interior angles are the same. If two triangles are similar, that means the interior angles are the same. So of course, this angle is equal to this angle. So if we look at this triangle and this triangle, this angle is the same as this angle. So this angle is common to both triangles. So it follows that the third angles are also the same. So they are similar. That's common sense. Now, let's try to compare the small triangle to the larger triangle. So, ang titingnan natin is yung increment sa x and also this part. Remember, this is one part and this is two parts. Diba? Kasi yung midpoint, divide sa kanila into two equal parts. Okay. So, let's take the ratio of this hypotenuse of the small triangle to the hypotenuse of the larger triangle. So, the ratio is 1 part is to 2 parts. Okay? That is equal to, or that is proportional to the ratio of the base of the smaller triangle to the base of the larger triangle. So, that would be xm minus x1 over x2 minus x1. Then solving for xm, that would be xm minus x1, that's equal to 1 half x2 minus x1. Simplifying, we have x minus x1 equal to 1 half x2 minus 1 half x1. Hence, xm is equal to 1 half x2 minus 1 half x1 plus x1. And what is x1 minus 1 half x1? So, x1, bawasan mo ng kalahati ng x1. So, half din yung lalabas. xm is equal to 1 half x2 plus 1 half x1. So, xm is just equal to 1 half of, if I factor out 1 half of the sum of x1 and x2. So, yun lang yung midpoint formula for x. And it follows if you do the same thing dun sa abscissa, sa ordinate, you'll have ym is equal to 1 half the sum of the ordinates. So y1 plus y2. And actually you can interchange this, it doesn't matter. So these are the midpoints formula. Ganun lang siya kadali.